Again, good morning. I thank everyone for being here and working together on our 6-foot rule here. Do we have a line of duty report, Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been looking for one of these flags. If you see the screen there, Blue Lives Matter. I gave my last report, our last report, on March 4th, and we're up 5 to 28 officers who we've lost in line of duty throughout the United States for the year 2020. It's still a lower number that's been, at least at this point, closing in on the third month, lower than the previous 2 years. Honor the fallen military remains at 14 for the first 3 months of 2020, and the U.S. Fire Administration is up 2 firefighters lost, line of duty deaths. The flag, they're available out there, and I think we need to consider flying them and just recognize. One time my middle son helped me put on a bulletproof vest. He's a little bigger in the shoulders than I am, but I'll tell you, I can't imagine having to wear one of those every day, all day long. That's just one aspect. These men and women go out, and they, during these times, they don't have any idea what they're going to be exposed to, but they go out. And that's just, it's just absolutely amazing. And then, of course, we showed this picture last week. We don't know where this came from, but it's so true to what we are asking of our healthcare people. The same kind of exposure. They have a little more protection, but they're working long hours. They're fatigued. They're sacrificing. They're offering. And like our first responders and law enforcement people, we need to protect at all costs. So in the report that you just helped me give, or allowed me to give there, Chair Patch, could we do a moment of silence, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you again for that time.
All right, do I have any amendments to the agenda? Commissioner Gold?
I have 2 that I would like to put under discussion after the multiple emails I've been getting. The first one is concerns regarding the homeless population, and the second one is the Kite Festival. They want to know that they put it on or don't, so.
All right, so we're going to add H, concerns over homelessness, for discussion, and I, the Kite Festival. Anything else, Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During these really tough times, I'd like to give the commissioners at the very beginning, instead of waiting till commissioner comments, just 2 or 3 minutes to bring an update and just encourage the citizens, be available for questions. And I propose that at the very beginning, instead of waiting or asking citizens that might be reviewing to go through the entire meeting to hear our comments. So can we discuss that, or is that something we could get board interest and approval of?
Well, I guess we can add that under discussion items, because right now the policy of the board is to do commissioner updates at the end, because so many people come for business first. So did you want to add that as a discussion item?
So, Mr. Chair, would that be 7I?
J, it would be 7J.
Yeah. Okay.
And you want that to be to move commissioner comments?
No, just a couple minutes to maybe a limited time there to just address the public, and I think it might only be necessary during the events that we're dealing with right now.
All right, so that'll be 7J. Any further amendments to the agenda?
I have none.
Motion, please.
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Next is public comments. Gordon Clay. Morning, Mr. Clay.
Good morning. Gordon Clay, Chair of the Curry County Suicide Awareness and Prevention Council. With the focus on what we do to stem COVID-19 at the federal, state, and county level, one major crisis area is being overlooked. In the past crisis like the Great Recession of 2007 and 9, the loss of jobs, sinking home values, and stock market freefall led to a significant rise in suicides. And I have this information on URLs that you can look it up. And basically what's being passed out is what I'm talking. There is massive scientific research that shows that the labor force status is a strong predictor of suicide deaths. With the stock market losing over 30% of its value, the unemployment rate expected to reach 4.6 million Americans, it's plausible that more people will die by suicide, drug overdose, and alcoholism than by COVID-19 itself. And what I have done on the web and this information is looked at SARS and H1N1 and a number of these, and in every single case, more people died by suicide, drug overdose, and liver disease than died by the disease itself. And we're overlooking that issue. Your friends, neighbors, colleagues, and even family members who have been undetected as being at suicide risk before the pandemic, and others who were not previously at risk for suicide but are significantly being impacted by school and business closures, the stock market sell-off, and by the directive of social distancing, need to hear from you. I'm talking to everybody out there that's listening. This is a call for all of us to learn the warning signs, to call them often, to show them you care, and maybe to spend $30 to take the online QPR course to get prepared for the short and long-term future. The newly commissioned Suicide Awareness and Prevention Council of Curry County is actively working to develop solutions to reduce suicidal issues specific to Curry County. I'm asking the people that are watching this, what do you think needs to be done to make this happen? We want to hear from you. My email is gordonclay@aol.com. Thank you for this, and also April is is Alcohol Awareness Month. And so with the tie of suicide and the tie of alcohol, these are two ideal times to really look at that. And of course, the self-injury proclamation that I'm not going to wait around and hope it gets passed. 70% of the people that are self-injurers that are really hooked on that will have a suicide attempt at least once.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Gordon, I see you sent this email out this morning at 1:07. I got it at 2 o'clock. Thanks. Very well done and much appreciated.
Thank you.
Next, we have Joshua Stout. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. All right. Well, I was asked to come before you guys today just to kind of give you a little update as to what we're doing out in the community. Some of you may or may not know, but I'm the director for Reach Out Worldwide, which is a disaster relief organization. We travel around the world on medical missions with teams of doctors and healthcare providers. On many of those deployments, we work in collaboration with the World Health Organization. And in many of those instances, we find ourselves actually making our own sanitizing spray, which is medical grade, and hand sanitizer gels to be field expedient and provide care to those people out in the field. So I was sitting there yesterday morning thinking about what we could do back here to kind of give ourselves a little jump start and kind of face the problem of the shortage of sanitizing sprays and gels that people can't get at the stores right now. Corner drug. It's hard to order them. They don't exist on Amazon. There's a back order. And I'm going to use, in conjunction with a couple local business owners, Sunset Family Pizza, Gold Beach Fire, South Coast Equipment Rentals, We fronted the money yesterday to make our first batch, and we started a GoFundMe account, of which we are actually going to mass produce this sanitization equipment, or not equipment, it's sprays and gels, to provide to the healthcare providers, first responders, free of charge. So all funds raised through the GoFundMe account would then be used to purchase materials from the local businesses, the liquor store, the healthcare store next to the titles company, Dan's Ace Hardware, Gold Beach Lumber, and Corner Drug. With those materials, we can actually inject some money back into the local economy, buy the materials to make that sanitization equipment, and then distribute to those who need it, who are finding that they are themselves in a shortfall, such as the hospital. You go in there and talk to the folks when you walk in the door, they need it. They said, we're running low. Also, in our partnership with Reach Out Worldwide, I have the ability to work with large box manufacturers such as Lowe's, who has a direct connection to 3M and things of that nature, and they're willing to support us with PPE, masks, and things of that nature as needed as they become available. So we're not just a couple guys making sanitization equipment out of the back of a truck. The recipe for this material is supported and created by the World Health Organization. So it's actually, never seen that light before. It's actually, a formula that is high on the sanitization scale. It's over 90%, where the materials that you purchase off the shelf are typically between 50 and 70%. So very effective, the intention, and it will be free of charge to everybody out in the community, but this was just to gain awareness.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we are trying to raise funds for the expenses to gather up these supplies. And so, Eric, if you can hear me, can you zero in on the name of their company here? Maybe I can put it up here.
Yeah, so we have the name that we came up with yesterday, very hastily, is the Clean One Initiative. And that initiative is just to provide sanitization equipment, the aerosols and gels, free of charge, and distribute to the folks who need it.
Council Huddle?
Thank you. Where can people obtain this?
So right now, we're going to create a Facebook, just a community forum, where people can request it. But the immediate address is to the hospitals, the health centers, CalOR, police departments, sheriff's departments, the county buildings that are considered essential that need to remain open, so you guys can clean your doors, your desks, and things of that nature. And then from there, as we scale, if we do scale, depending on the support we get, we can then open it up to the community and say, here's a pickup location.
Okay, thank you.
So we can, excuse me.
Commissioner Gold?
Could you email this information to us so we can get it out there? And then also, are you looking at having some of this sanitizer and equipment down in Brookings, simply because 2/3 of the population is down there?
Sure. I'm open to moving this around to where we need it.
Okay.
If I can work and find a group down there that's willing to set some time, if I can provide the materials and all the product based off of, maybe we find some stores down there that can provide the material just like I'm finding up here in Gold Beach, inject some money into their economy, get a group making it down there. I can go down and train them, and then we can have the same program running down in South County as well. And, one of the obstacles is, one of the products is 95% ethanol. It's actually, you can grab it, the OLCC actually has control of it. So we have reached out to some state representatives, and you guys are a great resource. I know you guys have great connections there. So finding a way to the OLCC to obtain the materials, potentially at a lesser rate than what it is on the shelf. We don't want anybody to lose money, but if it's coming from the OLCC, then maybe, I don't know. But getting, priority to that material to address this issue is going to be key to the state, and I feel that's probably something, probably, I shouldn't say probably, hopefully something that the state would get behind, because this can be deployed across the entire state and further if necessary. It just requires a little bit of training, but it does require that the materials be used for this purpose.
So would it help if I reach out to some of the volunteer groups to see if they have any interest in helping you?
It would. You know, we can communicate via email, and you know, there's a little bit of logistical concerns, and right on the front end, the money needs to be raised. So everything that we've done so far has just been out of the local businesses that started this, out of our pockets. So as we create awareness and the donations start coming in, we can start creating more. We can bring in more volunteers, and you know.
So if you send me, oh, I'm sorry.
That's
If you-
okay.
If you send me an email with this information, I can shoot it out to the volunteer groups and maybe get some interest and have them contact you
Perfect. I can do
for
that.
money or whatever.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I'll forward that email you sent this morning, that link. That's a good starter. I'll send it to Staff Jesuit, and it'll get done. And much appreciated. If I may distract you, just look to the right there. Some good news. The beginning of constructing the walls coming up of 3 or 4 of 37 homes. And this is not the only housing project in Curry County, but it's an important one, and it's just can't be said enough how good the news is, and appreciate your involvement in that very much, Mr. Stout.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And the whole, I mean, everybody's been a big piece of this project, and it's just refreshing. I've been waiting a year and a half to see walls going up, so.
It's awesome.
It's good to see for the county. So.
One more quick question, if I could. What kind of money are you looking to raise? I mean, I know everything is to scale, but the ballpark, do you know what this costs per gallon to make?
Yeah, so the first 5.2 gallons, because we were buying everything off the shelf at cost, cost us right around $350.
Retail.
What's that?
You're buying it retail.
We're buying it retail.
Yeah.
We're not asking, you know, the local stores to discount us. That's the intention, is to put some money back into them when they're not able to generate that revenue like they normally would. So 5.2 gallons at $350. The majority of that is controlled by the OLCC, which is the liquor cost. And so you can get that ethanol at the high grades there. So
95% ethanol will probably kill you. Pure ethanol is not good for you.
$350 per 5 gallons.
Staff Jesuit and I were looking for gin yesterday after you left. No.
Well, you would have found it because I don't use that. So.
Thank you very much. I appreciate what you're doing. All right, next we have a presentation, proclamation, April Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. They're not here, are they? Is Jack Antunes here? Wally's house? Not here.
Maybe you could just read it,
Okay, I can do the proclamation.
and I'm going to have you read the other one because I don't have access to the computer, so.
This is a proclamation from Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month, Jackie Antunes from Wally's house. Before the Board of Commissioners in and for the County of Curry, in a matter of a resolution proclaiming the month of April as Child Abuse and Prevention Month. Whereas nearly 5 children die every day in America from child abuse and neglect, and whereas a high number of children ages 0 to 17 in Curry County, Oregon, are victims of neglect and abuse each year. And President Donald Trump has proclaimed the month of April as National Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. And the victory over child abuse and neglect will not be achieved without the support of the entire community and recognition of the importance of awareness, raising to decrease incidents of abuse and to support child abuse victims and their families. And each April, Curry County's Wally's House, Curry Child Abuse Intervention Center, and other supporters of the child advocacy and abuse prevention movement ask the community to join the outreach efforts to reduce and prevent child abuse. Now therefore, the Board of Curry County Commissioners hereby resolves to proclaim April 2020 to be Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month in the County of Curry, and encourage all citizens to join in a national effort to raise awareness and help prevent child abuse and neglect, dated this 25th day of March.
I move that we approve this resolution,
Second, Mr.
or
Chair.
proclamation, sorry.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Way to go again in Wally's house.
Next, we have April is Volunteer Appreciation Month. Commissioner Gold.
Let me just say that I've reached out to many, many volunteer groups, and 30 of them, approximately 30, actually more, were going to be coming and doing presentations. There are hundreds of volunteers here in Curry County, if not thousands, low thousands. And our county, in my opinion, could not function without these volunteer groups. They do so much. And I've been very fortunate to be able to contact these people. They were all more than willing to step up to the plate, and that's why I said something to Josh about reaching out to those groups about this sanitation equipment, because I know volunteers generally are very concerned with others. So I would like Chair Pash to read the proclamation, because I don't have access to my computer, so.
Right. Before the Board of County Commissioners in and for the County of Curry, Oregon, proclamation April 2020 Volunteer Appreciation Month in Curry County. Whereas in 1974, the President of the United States declared the third week in April as Volunteer Appreciation Week, and Curry County has hundreds of volunteers donating their time, talent, and resources to make the community a better place. And their acts of kindness help build a better and brighter future, and remind us that we all have a role to play in making our communities safer, healthier, and stronger. And the Board of County Commissioners wishes to recognize the volunteers for their service, but realizes 1 week is not enough time to thank those people that, through their volunteerism, renew the ethic of service, which is fundamental to the success of our county and the nation. And on February 5th, 2020, the Board of County Commissioners agreed to set time aside at their meetings in April to show their gratitude to the volunteers in Curry County. Now, therefore, the Curry County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaim the month of April 2020 be known as Volunteer Appreciation Month, and the beginning of every Board of Commissioners meeting in April is reserved to recognize, learn from, and show gratitude for the county volunteers, dated this 25th day of March 2020.
I move that we approve this proclamation, and with one caveat, we're going to have to postpone the presentations. We were going to film them, but even that had to be postponed. So I sent an email out to the volunteers stating that we will not forget them. So I move that we accept this proclamation.
Second, Chair Pash.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Definite aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Before we move on to consent agenda, I want to read something into the record. I think we need to do this. I was asked to do it anyway. This is from the Eye Center in Gold Beach. To whom it may concern, our patient Mary Rowe has severe vision issues due to her cataracts, and she is unable to see well out of her left eye, which is 20 by 200. Until she is available to have surgery, she will need accommodation for the scenarios in which vision plays a factor in your meetings. This had to, we wanted to make sure that this was put in, that we do recognize that we have handicapped residents in the county, and we will do what we can to help and assist them so that they can come to the meetings and participate. Next, we have our consent agenda. A, transfer of an employee, Hamel Ashby, C. Hamel Ashby. B, promotion of an employee, Chet Brewer. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair, to approve the consent agenda, 2 items.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Moving on to 7, discussion action items, Oregon Public Works Emergency Response Cooperative Assistance Agreement with signature authority to the chair, Richard Christensen. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Board. Richard Christensen, Curry County Roadmaster. We're looking to renew our agreement with the state, and this agreement was additional government agencies with local, county, and state, where we would share our equipment, materials, and staffing as needed for any emergency statewide, and we'd recover our costs. And this would allow us to get assistance from other agencies as well. So I'm just looking to renew this agreement.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Christensen? Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the agreement as presented by Roadmaster Christensen.
Second?
Second, Chair Pash.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And also, we were going to talk later today, possibly, this morning.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I have the next one on the agenda too, though.
Right. I just noticed that. Board signature for Dyer Partnership Task Order 10B for Archaeological Investigation Permit for Oregon State Historic Preservation Office. Mr. Christensen.
Part of the permitting process for our $2.3 million Memorial Bridge replacement project requires us to do archaeological investigations because there historically was a tribe at that location. And we're working with the Coquille tribe and Chief down on Ivy. And so we have to do this work, perform this work, and low bid's a little over $22,000. And if they find something, the cost goes up, and we would have to come back with if there was follow-up items.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve this Dryer Partnership Task Order.
Second?
Chair, I will second. I just have a quick question.
Further discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you. It's been a little bit of a headache for you, haven't it? It's been a lot of detail. Not that this portion is a headache, but it's been a fairly lengthy process to get this done.
Yes, it has, but our contract engineering firm Dyer's been carrying the load on that for us, and it's helping us move along. Our project's on schedule, it's in budget, and we're looking for construction this summer.
Terrific. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
C, order limiting public access to certain county buildings. Facilities Director Brewer, you're no longer acting.
Good morning, everybody. Chuck Brewer, Facilities Maintenance. Asking if we can possibly close down this county building to direct services for the public, but they can be appointments set up and or email or phone calls at this time to try and conserve contact and materials and equipment. And that's about all I've got at this point to try and give you reasoning.
Well, I think we spoke about this briefly yesterday. It's important under the governor's order that we try and adhere to her order.
Correct.
I think, as we've discussed in emails, it's imperative, though, that the public be kept up to speed on what offices are, why we're closed and how to get a hold of those offices for service. Yesterday, I saw someone come in, wanted to pay their taxes. So we need to make sure if we close the building down, that we have proper notification on the doors of why we're closed, of course, because of the our governor's order, but maybe a line for each office that is represented in the building, with a phone number and or an extension for that, so that people can clearly see as they come to the door. The offices are closed, but if you need to get a hold of the treasurer's office, or you need to get a hold of, building or tax assessor, this is the number
Sure.
to get a hold of that person at. We are open,
Right,
and,
yes.
and you can set up an appointment by calling this number. Those kind of things are gonna be
Agreed.
important.
And I guess in short, trying to think of everything, Director Smelzer has put all that together on a sheet, and we are going to be posting them even before we secure the doors. The courthouse, I guess, would be another thing, so the public is understanding, will not be under that directive from the governor and their order. But just this county building, and basically we ask anybody, if you need to come in for any of the services, to call ahead and see if you can set an appointment.
But isn't my understanding like the clerk's office? Sorry, I've got a cough drop in my mouth.
All right?
I got marbles in my mouth. The clerk's office, she will close her office to the general public just walking in. You'll see that notice on her door that says, if you need to come in, contact us through this number.
I'm glad you clarified that. No, after talking with Renee Cohen, she has asked that we leave her door open, but still ask people to make appointments, just for the simple fact is, I guess there's voting of, I can't remember what she titled it, I apologize, some kind of voting coming up here in a few days, and by the time we did the transition, she would just rather leave it open and just ask the public to make an appointment if possible, but she's taking walk-ins, is my understanding.
Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think the date the responsibilities you just mentioned might be the absentee and overseas
Yes,
ballots.
thank you
Does that
very
make
much.
sense?
I
Okay,
appreciate
thank
that.
you. I just want to read one quick sentence that's
Sure.
on here for the public. Since the inception of the county's response to the COVID-19, facilities maintenance has been spending staff time and supplies to sanitize the common areas of the annex building and courthouse. Getting a little low on supplies,
Sure.
so maybe we can help you with that, or people with great ingenuity. And if I may, real quick, Mr. Chair, ask Council Huddle on our temporary policy response to the novel coronavirus, COVID-19. We might want to incorporate that into this policy, and you clearly recognized and stated that this is just, the term nowadays is a fluid document, so it's going to potentially be changing quite a bit. Would that be appropriate?
Right, so if you're talking about the hours of operation into the draft policy that's in the packet, yeah, they can be a single document. Multiple documents is okay as well. It's the will of the board. I mean, I think what Facilities Maintenance Director Brewer is asking for is pretty simple. The one question I had about the signage on the door, I think it says we're closed. I think it might say we're open, but the door is locked, might be a more accurate phrase, because if someone just sees closed, they may just turn around and not read the rest. So I think
Good point.
it just, yeah, thank you.
Be
And
frustrated.
it just might help, because again, I've heard from the commissioners that we're open for business just by appointment only for the most part. So that's just trying to help carry out the will of the board.
That's a very good point, sir.
But Commissioner Boyce, again, the request from Director Brewer can be folded into the second item, but it might also be just as easy to adopt his recommendation now and move on to the second item, which might have a lot more talking points and things to it that might need more time and stuff. So it might just be simpler to do this and then do that later.
Both you and Director Brewer mentioned, almost emphasizing, which I think is good, the public to know that we are open. So if they do see that sign, they might just pick up on that one word, become frustrated, and not have access. So I think this is a
Good point.
very good plan and much appreciated and very appropriate for where we are right now.
Commissioner Gold?
I concur with the comments made previously.
Okay. Well, I just want the public to know that this will be a board decision for the AGRS, and we are declaring an emergency, and this is one, we have declared an emergency, and this is one of the responses to that emergency, to not only protect the employees of this building, but to protect the public at large. So, again, please note that we will post times and phone numbers for the operation of the county services. So do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the order limiting public access to certain county buildings.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Great work.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, next is D, order designating essential employees in the event of a shelter-in-place or quarantine order is implemented. Council Huddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I actually just received this morning, and I can print it out for the board, a revised order. But essentially, the governor has restricted travel to all but essential workers. This order is to designate county employees as essential workers so that in the event they are traveling for work purposes or to or from work and they get, stopped for any reason, they will be able to show they're not in violation of that governor's order. There's a blend here of considerations because when employees are thinking they're designated as essential, that is a requirement from the board that they actually physically come here to work. It's a different consideration. So this is just to designate for purposes of complying with the governor's order that these employees are essential and they have authority to travel within the times of restrictions. Director Schmelzer, I believe, is working on a different, I'll call it a continuity of operations concept, where staggering staff or directing people to work remotely to reduce, to do our best to comply with the other part of the governor's order, which is to essentially shelter in place and work from home. That's a kind of an administrative concept that the Director of Operations is working on in her capacity as overseeing the operations of the county and the direction of employees. So this is to designate essential. I have an amended order. I printed it out. It's on my printer. I didn't bring it in, but I'd request that you, and it's been modified after Director Schmelzer was able to survey the different entities. We're still designating all of the county health as essential, all of the sheriff as essential, emergency manager as essential, county council, all the other departments, all the clerk, all the assessor and taxation. Again, it's just to allow them to do their work during the time of the governor's shutdown. So I don't have anything else unless there's any questions.
I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Boyce?
This is 4 short paragraphs. Do you want to read that for the public, or are we okay just to approve this? A lot of work did go into this.
Well, again, it's just, we have declared an emergency, and this is a response to the emergency. To comply, the Board of Commissioners has adopted temporary personnel rules related to leave and attendance. The temporary attendance rules request department heads and management to designate employees as essential so as to allow those personnel to travel to and from work, as council stated, and for work purposes during federal, state, and local quarantine. The board has received input from the departments and is otherwise informed in the premises. So we are basically ordering that these are the essential employees as recommended from County Council and Director of Operations Schmelzer.
And so it will be as amended by Director of Operations Schmelzer.
As amended.
Yep.
Commissioner Boyce?
Oh, and just, council also clarified that as related to county business, that's what the travel covers.
Right.
Thank you.
I move that we approve the order as possibly amended by Director Schmelzer.
Second, Chair Pash.
Ms. Swift? For discussion?
Good morning, Julie Swift, Payroll and HR. Just for clarification, if people are told to shelter in place and they are not able to work remotely, is that paid time for them still, or are they using their own time? Just want clarification.
Well, that's a different consideration. This is just designating them so they can travel if they're, and so I think we can have a side conversation on that, but I don't know that that's exactly what they're voting on right now.
Okay. But I think that needs to be clarified for those that are considered non-essential and can't work at home and are told to stay home.
Okay, well, I think we adopted the emergency personnel rules, and the governor, there has been I think it would fall under again, I don't want to get off the track of what we're talking about here, but I believe that's covered, I think, in section 4 of that, where it says if there is a statewide shutdown, shelter-in-place order, then I believe it says they're administrative paid leave, but I can't.
For 2 weeks.
For a minimum of 2 weeks, right. So I think that would be triggered by the governor's order.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it is clear for all employees what their status is.
I think we might need to come back and talk about that with the board, and we can put that order in front of them so they have the language to look at. So for now, I think that's until we get the board to look at the actual language and consider that in light of the governor's order. For now, you're just voting on the essential workers. I think the initial response is it's under the statewide shutdown of the temporary rules, but we'll take a look at it a little bit later after we get a chance to see the language.
Thank you.
If you could bring in that order, the temporary rules, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes?
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
E, Curry County Temporary Policy Response to Novel Coronavirus. Commissioner Boyce.
This is the document that I referred to a bit ago that a lot of time went into this, despite that it is, I want to give a shout out to our Coos County Commissioners who, after they approved this, their Board of Commissioners on Tuesday the 17th, I was able to get a copy of this 15 minutes later with their okay to basically duplicate and tailor to Curry County's interest. And so I want to read and I read this, I don't know, 2 meetings ago, maybe 3, just 2 short paragraphs, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
This temporary policy is to recognize that the novel coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, may impact Curry County. Emergency Order 20-03 provides that the Board of Commissioners may authorize modifications to payroll processes and workplace requirements, designations as deemed necessary to address impacts associated with COVID-19. Curry County is committed to ensuring the safety of Curry County employees, which you just referenced again, Mr. Chair, while continuing to serve the community to the best of our abilities. The county is adhering to the recommendations of the Curry County Public Health Department, the Oregon Health Authority, and the Centers for Disease Control regarding preventative measures, including social distancing, quarantines, and possible curtailment of non-critical county functions. The county will continue to adjust if the recommendations of these agencies change. The last sentence, I think, gives us a lot of leeway, as it states, as needed. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. So, you looking for a motion or no? Not yet?
Yes.
Item 7E, Curry County Temporary Policy Response to the novel coronavirus COVID-19. Response, I guess, is a proper term here now.
This is not an order, though. This is just the county's response.
Adoption?
To these.
Does everybody understand okay?
I'm really not clear what you're asking for then.
Well, it's an action item.
One second. JJ?
I believe this is classified as a policy versus an order,
Temporary policy response.
which means it would be filed with the clerk.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to look through all this. We're going to have a break in a few minutes anyway. Can we bring this back after that break? Or I would just like to look through this again. To be honest with you, I haven't read the whole thing, and I just want to make sure of of what we're going to do here.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, that's okay. We worked on this a lot last week. We really haven't made any changes to it since then, have we?
No, the one thing that the policy that Commissioner Boyce submitted had in it originally was a temporary personnel rules, section 3, and because we have our own temporary personnel rules that we just discussed with payroll officer Swift, I recommended we remove that from the temporary policy. But other than that, I didn't advise any changes. But if it would help me to help the board to look at it one more time, especially if the chair wants more time and you ask, to have better discussion. So,
Mr. Chair, I don't see any, if I may?
Sure.
I don't see any great rush, so I'm certainly fine with that. And so I will withdraw my motion. Another key word there, temporarily.
Good. Yeah, we'll bring it back after the break. We can bring it back, and I'll have time during the break to read it. All right, next we have F, proclaiming March Self-Injury Awareness Month. Commissioner Boyce?
Gordon came today, and the documents relating back historically to the Great Depression and the stock market and all that, and with all we're dealing with, it would be easy, in my view, to overlook some of the pressures on people. It's sometimes nowadays referred to as social determinants, and more of a concern, family breakdowns, especially in a rural area, what we're dealing with. And so, his efforts, unfortunately, maybe fortunately, were delayed because I just didn't get it done in time for the last couple of meetings. And so today, Mr. Chair, I'm just really happy to report our next meeting, as he mentioned, is April 1st in the Curry Suicide Awareness and Prevention Committee. And I'm just amazed at the quality and professionalism of the 16 or 17 people that he's been able to get. Quite a diverse group, very committed to Curry County. And so this declaring March as Self-Injury Awareness Month, I think, is, and a continued awareness and attention to this would be very appropriate for our county. And hopefully we can help lead other counties long term.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Next we have G, Curry Essential Newspaper. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. There was a little bit of confusion. About a year ago, we named all three, I think appropriately so, all three of our local newspapers in Curry County as newspapers of record. I just want to refer back to, this is very important to our rural county and our best options. It's certainly an important option. I didn't mean to leave out our two radio stations in terms of reaching the public, KURY in Brookings and KGBR in Gold Beach. But we have Matt Hall sitting here every day, or every meeting that we have, and the Curry Coastal Pilot comes out timely, twice a week, and 6 months ago or so, it did dawn on me, what if these papers, because it's no pun intended, but newsflash, print media is not a real profitable business these days. And so this is a way to tell the whole state that we're serious about our newspapers being essential to reaching our people. We spend a little bit of money. I think we get pretty good rates, all three newspapers do our proper public notifications routinely. And so I saw it as an opportunity here, again, to let the world know, hey, we value our newspapers. What would it be like without them? And we have a good working relationship. It's hard work for them, and it's convenient for us and our obligation to reach the citizens. So this is not related to the responsibility of naming the papers as newspapers of record, but it is just a recognition that we're going to do everything we can to support them and encourage them and keep them here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Yes. Matt Hall?
Matt Hall, Curry County reporter, Myrtle Point Herald and Port Orford News. Thank you, Mr. Boyce. This is also to ensure that I and my employees, distribution, etc., have freedom of movement during this crisis. As pointed out earlier, 40% of people in Curry County do not have computers and or internet. And as per such, we feel that it's a valuable community service to be able to get your information and the emergency information out to them during this time. Thank you. Incidentally, this has also been brought to the governor's attention by the ONBA.
Oregon Newspaper Association. Yes, thank you, Mr. Hall.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd move that we approve item 7G, Curry Essential Newspapers, Media.
I'm not sure what we're approving. I thought you just had a discussion about how important they are. So is there
an order?
Order or a proclamation or?
Well, again, it's an action item, naming Curry Essential Newspaper Media. The question is, do we deem them as essential to Curry County and our citizens? And is that the word we're sending to the state of Oregon? Mr. Hall mentioned the governor, the Oregon Newspapers Association.
Well, I, of course, support our
Thank you.
newspapers and radios, but I don't know if we need to, this is, Council Huddle may know better. Is this something that we should be voting on? I mean, I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah,
that
I'm in agreement.
newspapers
I'm
and
not
radio are
disputing
absolutely
that,
essential
but-
to the citizens of this community.
So I've been kind of trying to connect the dots here on this, and it sounds like the idea is again, the governor has issued a order, essentially shelter in place, stay at home, and only travel for essential purposes. I think what this would be is a statement of policy on the part of the Board of Commissioners to declare the newspaper in our county, all of them, and their distributors as essential for the citizens. And so with that, you can make such a proclamation.
Is that your intent, Commissioner Boyce?
I didn't put it under the proclamation category,
Well,
but maybe that's appropriate.
It can be a declaration of proclamation. You could even order, I suppose, that within our county, newspapers and their distributors are free to travel on business and work purposes during this time. So you can also do that. That would essentially be a direction, at least to our sheriff, that the sheriff not pull over cite any newspaper workers while they're doing their work during this time of shelter-in-place order.
Is that your intent, sir?
Yeah, and I think that Mr. Hall mentioned and emphasized that the press needs freedom to travel and to be available.
Okay.
Today is a good example.
So did you want to come back, because we're going to go on break in a couple of minutes. We can go on break after this and redo this as a proclamation.
I'll be glad to.
And that we're there, yeah, I'm sure you'll get support on it.
Okay.
Absolutely. Why don't we go ahead and break? It's 5 till. Why don't we go ahead and break 5 minutes early, and we'll come back at 10:10. Let's come back at 10:10. So if I could have Caitlin Coleman step to the podium, please, and introduce yourself. Good morning.
Good morning, Board. Caitlin Coleman, Event Center Manager. I'm just here this morning to kind of let you guys know where we're at over at the Event Center and what kind of processes we're following, since we fall into a unique combination of not county employee but following county HR rules in some ways. So we are closed to the public. We do email and phone business at the moment. I am working part-time from home, part-time in the office when necessary. The office assistant is doing similar work, more in the office for bills and things like that. Our maintenance guys are doing a deep clean on our facilities while we have all of our events canceled for the time being. We are looking at the future and the possible needs of the event center. We know that Salem has utilized their fairgrounds as a temporary hospital setup with temporary beds and things in place to help assist the hospital system there. And I've spoke with Jeremy Dumeyer about the possibility of that at our facility if necessary, if we get to that point, in preparation for the overwhelmingness that is going to happen at our hospital if it gets here and spreads as rapidly as it has been. So we have spoken about what that'll look like and what resources we'll need to utilize and call in to help support our healthcare system in utilizing the fairgrounds as an emergency base. So that's where we're at for now, if you have any questions.
No. Anyone have any questions?
I just have a comment about having a possible setup for extra patients. I think something like that needs to be done in South County also. I'm not, diminishing
I could
the-
move the building, but yeah, no, I agree. There's lots of resources down there that can be utilized as well.
Lots of empty space.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it a couple of days ago, the possibility of the Rush Center, because they're already set up with some basic healthcare needs there that we could, in an emergency, I'm sure Dr. Rush would be wanting to help us out with that. So, did you have a comment, Commissioner?
No, just welcome. I know you haven't been here very long, right in the middle of
It's
this.
been a great jump-in start.
Yeah, I appreciate you getting with Jeremy right away on that, because I think it's good to be proactive, and we've got the space over there. It's close to the hospital, so that would be great if hopefully we won't need it, but if we do. Oh, quick question I have. I know we had the concert there a month ago, several weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I know there were some failures because of the COVID had just started. A lot of people called and canceled late. I know there was a whole busload of people I heard that canceled.
Yeah, there was.
How did we end up on that?
I don't have the details or the final response from the event planner. We've asked for it several times, but haven't gotten any details on how it all came down.
People that were there were thrilled, though? I heard it was a great event.
I've heard that the music was great. I wasn't able to be there for a majority of it because kids, but they're chaos. But from the feedback that I've gotten is that people enjoyed the music, enjoyed the vendors that were there.
Good.
So, yeah.
Well, Caitlin,
Learning
nice,
experience for everyone.
glad to have you here, and I look forward to working with you.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, getting back to our discussion items, let's go back to 7E, the temporary policy response. Commissioner Boyce?
So did you have a chance to read that? Are you okay? Oop.
Counsel?
Thank you. If I could, Commissioner Boyce did present this to me before submitting it to the agenda, and there was a section in there that talked about temporary personnel rules, and I basically just looked at it very briefly and said, we've already adopted temporary personnel rules, so I think that can be taken out, and so that was done. The rest, to me, seemed very much up to the board. It almost makes sense for the board just to go through this section by section to see what parts they want to adopt or not, if needed. A lot of this should sound very familiar to the board already, and so it might be something that the board says, we've already got it. Technically, I didn't read it that closely when Commissioner Boyce submitted to me last week, but I believe emergency order in the very second line of it, 0203049L, I have to believe that is a artifact from the original document from a different organization. I don't believe we have an emergency order 0203049L, so we could probably just strike that part out.
That's why I didn't read that.
Yeah, but in the meantime, ensuring committee safety of employees, that's certainly fine. Public closure, do we need a definition for that? Do we need a definition for facility closure? Do we need a definition for curtailed operations? Do we need a definition for telecommuting? Do we need a definition for social distancing?
What document are you on, sir?
Is this the temporary policy for coronavirus?
Temporary personnel rules.
I apologize. The temporary personnel rules are what I asked Director Swift. This is actually in your agenda packet.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I just had the wrong one.
And I'm looking at temporary policy response to novel.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I was just going
Temporary
down.
personnel, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The temporary personnel rules, Curry County, Oregon temporary personnel rules, that was the question of Director Swift. She and I had a a brief sidebar, and I wanted to walk you through the analysis of her question so that you'd be on board with how
Gotcha.
that plays out. But in the meantime, this
Oh,
is
yeah, I'm
Commissioner
with you now.
Boyce's item. Sure.
So which one, we're on 7E still, or no, we're going?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going through, Council, I appreciate you going through that, if you don't mind, and letting us know
Yeah.
that we got through definitions.
Yeah, well, these are the questions. I mean, do we need a definition of a public closure? Do we need a definition of facility closure? Do we need a definition of curtailed operations? Do we need a definition of telecommuting? Do we need a definition of social distancing? I think, it seems like all of these are out in the public, consciousness by now, and the governor has done, the orders. We just did and this is where Commissioner Boyce asked, could we fold in the prior order that you just did about facility closure, that Chet Brewer asked for. So we could probably remove facility closure out of this. This is really a discussion item that, I think Commissioner Boyce is putting it out there for the board to consider. And the board, I think, it makes sense to consider a lot of these things, but it's up to the board to see if we need, these definitions. We just did facility closure. I don't know that we need
Right.
to fold that in here. Then general employee safety measures. These are guidance from the CDC and those kind of things. A public closure, the Board of Commissioners made a determination, and we're open, but we're locked. We just clarified that, and those changes are being made to that document. And then it says department heads and elected officials will make the determination. I feel like we kind of went through that. The clerk is going to keep hers open. Mr. Brewer was here, and the board did that. This does seem to reflect what we are doing. So for the board to adopt it as a policy would not be offensive or in violation or opposing anything we're doing. So it's all common sense and things we're doing. If a department or office makes a determination, this does do some things. It allows the department heads authority. Staggered shift, I understand this is being imposed by the jail as well as, I think, Director Schmelzer for some of her departments, building and planning folks and some others. Telecommuting, again, we have our temporary personnel rule. If you remember, it had those three categories that the work is suitable. The employees are going to make the request to work from home. If their work is suitable for remote work, if we have the computer and the internet capacity. This says check with the IT department, those kind of things. This seems very similar to what we're doing on our work from home policy and our personnel regs. And then it talks about only a limited number. We had Phil, Dixon from Coos Curry say that we might only have a percentage of laptops available for a quarter or so. Department heads will determine if the position is suitable. So this is, it does seem like it is the policy of this board. It says the department heads and elected officials make these determinations. We can appeal to the Board of Commissioners. I think we got rid of the appeal process. We just said, look, this is an emergency. We're not going to do that.
Yeah, so this is basically very similar to what we enacted last week.
It is. It's similar. So again, like I said, it's not offensive to anything we're doing. Again, it's got additional safety guidelines on the end. It says employees shall follow these. I believe I've seen posters or things on the doors already posted talking about social distancing, wash hands, 6 feet, all these kind of things. Avoid in-person meetings. So again, this to me is it's not offensive to what we're doing. It's very much similar to what we already are doing, but if the board wants to adopt it as a policy, you can. The one thing it has in here that we might remove would be the appeal to the board. We got rid of the appeal part, and the board could also say we're doing this, and I don't know. It's really for the board to consider. And I don't know if I saw Commissioner Boyce have his hand up, so.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We worked on this during an executive session with some other department heads, and temporary personnel rules, I thought, and when you had recommended that we take that out of this document, that I was a little surprised, but I thought you had good reasons and still do think that. But that was one document that tied everything together. That's what I thought that was kind of where we were going, but honestly, I didn't study it that close. I have a lot of trust with the 3 Coos County Board of Commissioners, and so, and then there was a liability aspect. I mean, if we are properly notifying the public and doing our job, maybe this is an avenue. I'm not saying I'm promoting that for sure, but that's one document, one policy, temporary as it is, moving forward.
Commissioner Gold?
In reading through this, it looks like we've pretty much implemented everything that's in this document. And my question is the purpose of this, to have it all in one place? If that's the purpose, I'm not opposed, but we basically have implemented everything here already.
Council Huddle?
Thanks, and I know Commissioner Boyce, you said we talked about this in executive session. I think there was some discussion in executive session. Was there also follow-up discussion in another management meeting as well where it was discussed? But and then of course some of this was done without the benefit of Director Schmelzer's presence, and it might make sense for the board to basically delegate this for her review and comment to see if she has anything to say about it, because some of this kind of goes into her purview as well. You know, staggering shifts of employees, that's kind of going to be those kind of things. So, again, I think the board could adopt it or direct it to be adopted after review and approval by Director Schmelzer or something like that. So, so that we do have it all in one place. Right now we have a personnel rule, we have a building closure rule that we just did, and then this idea here. It might make sense to synthesize, to put those all together into one document.
I'd kind of like to lean that way, Commissioner Boyce, if you wouldn't be disagreeable to that, to let Ms. Schmelzer, brief this as well, and then we can bring it back.
Not opposed, Mr. Chair. I have two Wednesdays in a row now, though. I've read the first 2 paragraphs, which highlights, number one, employee safety. You also mentioned it today. I think we're all on board on that. And then in addition, public safety. So I don't know if we need to spend a lot more time on it. I think there's a liability issue there that shows us being well organized. And again, I want to emphasize that this is something we're probably going to need to change over time, depending, and I'm certainly not opposed to having Director Schmelzer review.
All right, thank you.
So we're tabling that, or?
We're going to table it, until Ms. Schmelzer reviews it.
Thanks. So just some general consensus that Director Schmelzer will review it and bring it back. And
yes,
good. So then, if you wanted to go back to the one you were just talking about, which was also, we were just talking about this in the context of both things, both the office closure, essential employees, and the materials Commissioner Boyce submitted. And this was our temporary rules that we adopted a little bit ago. And the questions for Director Swift that she had was on the very last page, workplace closure. Do you have this, Commissioner Boyce? Yep. So on the very last
Thank
workplace closure. And we mentioned staggered operations. So one of the questions we had from jail staff, they are going to go to staggered operations. Possibly, excuse me. I guess they were asking what would happen if they did. And so what we talked about was, for instance, okay, now you're going to just stay at home. You can't work from home. It's not appropriate for work from home. So you're under the general workplace closure based on the governor's order, and we don't have work for them here, so they're essentially forced not to work. And then those employees would be placed on paid administrative leave for up to 2 weeks. So let's say they're off a week, and then they come back for a week. If we need that 3rd week, they're off a week, then they'd get up to 2 weeks. My understanding, when we were adopting this, we were following some of the federal and state guidelines, and I think the concept was if we flatten the curve for 2 weeks, we'll probably come out of this okay and be closer to business as usual. Commissioner Boyce, you mentioned we may need to revisit some of these rules at the end of the 2-week time to see how the national and state picture is. But so what Julie and I felt the answer to the jail commander was yes, if you can't work from home at the jail, so they don't qualify for that. They're being told not to come to work because of the shutdown, and therefore, if they're gone for a week, that would be administrative paid leave, and that was what we had come up with. We want to communicate to the board, unless the board said no, that's not what we meant, or that's not how we want it to work. So we're kind of telling you how we think this would work, and if you have any heartburn with that, let us know.
Ms. Swift, that is the state and federal guidelines and is currently, as you know?
Well, that's our guidelines, so we, said they get 2 weeks of paid administrative leave if we shut down.
I understand, but I'm asking, is that also, to your knowledge, the state and federal guidelines on this as well, that
Well,
you
I know
know,
that-
if you know?
I do know that the Federal Family Medical Leave Act is being altered to allow 2 weeks of paid leave at 2 weeks of paid sick leave. It's beginning, I believe, April 2nd. I haven't looked at the whole thing. I know John reviewed it, so, and then it's kind of confusing, actually. But our policy that we've adopted is that if the workplace closes down, they get 2 weeks of paid administrative leave. If that's the same as the state and the federal, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I
That's
have,
up to 2 weeks.
yes.
Okay.
So, and then if it goes past that, then it goes to our personnel rules where they use their own time if they're not here.
Correct.
So here's a scenario. We have an essential staff member whose daycare is now closed, but the workplace is closed. So does she get paid admin leave while she's on? Because in our rules, a school or daycare closure means that they use their own time. But the workplace shutdown says they get 2 weeks of paid admin leave, but they're an essential employee, so they may have to be here, or they can be here because they can't work at home.
Well, these kind of decisions, I would think, are more, in my opinion, are more department head decisions, because that person may be able to work at home, even though the daycare is closed. They're going to have their toddlers running around. Perhaps they could work, a 6 or 8 hour day at home, but only 3 or 4 of it's actually work.
Right,
or
or
while
be
we're
able-
napping or something
Right,
like
or be
that.
able to work here for 3 or 4 hours, and then the balance of the time would be admin leave.
I think these kind of things have to be left to department heads, and then if they have confusion, then we can, as a board, address it. But between Director Schmelzer and all the department heads in the county, that would be my thought.
We'll implement the policy.
I agree with that also. I think we need to refrain from micromanaging everything.
Okay. Very good. Do you need anything else?
So I was just going to also include it in there as a form that we created. Thank you, Commissioner Boyce, for getting this from Coos County that we modeled. That's if someone needs to be absent due to the COVID-19, that there are 4 different reasons in our rule that we said, if someone needs to be absent, these are the things that are going to happen. So a person would fill this out, give it to their supervisor. They don't have to indicate what reason it is that they're not here, and then that gets processed and put in their file. And on their timesheets, they'll indicate the time that they're off due to COVID-19, so we have that tracking mechanism.
Yeah, so hopefully, well, again, tracking, so hopefully if there is any kind of assistance for us local governments from, the larger governments, we will be able to show them our documentation of tracking the COVID issue. So, again, we're all trying to work together and do everything we can to track this and help our employees, so, and the public, is keep them safe.
Commissioner Boyce?
Didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay, I'm done.
Thank you. Just the last 50 minutes of discussion, it tends to put more pressure on staff, well, actually all of us. So if there's something we don't need to revisit or put on someone else's desk to do, creating more, and I'm not saying that any of it's unnecessary or is necessary, I'm just saying we need to be really very much on guard to not overload. We're all on a tremendous overload right now, and so I don't have anything specific to say we are spending too much time on. I just want to make the board aware that my opinion is we could just review that and be a little more aware. Be careful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Julie.
Next, we're going to deal with 7H, the homeless concerns, Commissioner Gold.
I got a letter from Beth Barker Hidalgo, and I sent it on to our Director of Operations, Ms. Schmelzer. Let me just read quickly the letter. As we navigate this situation, it's important to remember our unhoused folks and how they may contribute to the spread of COVID-19 as parks and public restrooms are shutting down everywhere, leaving people with no options for where to go, how to take care of hygiene needs. At SOCRC, we are distributing food bags containing OHA's COVID-19 testing guidance and what to do if the people coming in are feeling ill. I'm asking our community leaders, as we plan for the best possible outcome, we include how we plan to access or address COVID-19 and our homeless population. Coos County PH, Public Health, I guess, is leaning forward, setting up screening locations at Devereaux Center, Harmon, and College Park churches. Coos Health and Wellness is assembling hygiene kits that include digital thermometers and printed guidelines for what to do if people begin to show signs of illness. At SOCRC, we are anxiously waiting for an infrared thermometer and pulse ox so we can begin screening our clients. I'm very concerned how we will monitor those who have symptoms or test positive, since we have no authorized locations for people to camp or shelter in place. I feel it would be prudent if Curry County and the cities begin planning for these types of outreach activities to mitigate the spread within Curry County. So I forwarded this letter on to Director Schmelzer, and she is in the process of coming up with a possible plan to deal with this situation. But I thought the board should be apprised of what's going on. And let me just add something to this. I have received correspondence from a lady that is very concerned with her daughter that went over to Las Vegas and back to a trade show. She was showing flu-type symptoms, was negative for that, and then is having severe respiratory problems. So I gave this information to Curry Health Network, but this lady is not really happy with the response, and I also gave it to the public health administrator. So I think this is something we need to take seriously, so that's why I sent all this stuff on. So that's all I have to say here.
Okay. Commissioner Boyce?
Commissioner Gold, thank you for your reference to Coos County Health and Wellness. You might remember, gosh, has it been a year ago now, Ginger Swan came down, who is a retired delegate there, director, and she is still available to help us. She come down on the public health period there where we had that transition, and so, yeah, there again, working with the other counties is very beneficial, and that's a great organization there. That's all, Mr. Chair.
All right. Next, we have 7I, Kite Festival.
Okay, the Kite Festival is scheduled for July 17th, 18th, and 19th. I got an email from the individual who's in charge of this, wondering whether we should continue planning for it because of all that's going on. I directed this email to Director Schmelzer, and she suggested that they continue planning as if it will happen because probably the infection will be stopped by then, I hope. But anyway, I thought I'd bring it before the board and see if there's any recommendations other than...
Well, I know last night I learned that they had put the Olympics off until 2021. Mm-hmm. But the main decision, because everyone said a lot of those are outdoor sports, and the main decision for putting it off was because of the sports in the confined areas. So because the Kite Festival is outdoors, I would probably say that we let them continue on for now with planning it, and then we can always change that as near as we can to get us a few more weeks out to see how this, the fight against this COVID-19 is going to shake out.
What was the date again, if I may ask?
July
3rd.
17th, 18th, and 19th.
Thank you. Yeah, I would encourage them not, if I may, Mr. Chair, not to cancel yet.
Okay, I will email
What?
her and,
Well, what is the county's role in the kite festival?
the county really is not in charge of that. I got this because of volunteers.
Okay, well, so again, really, there's no official vote or anything from the board?
Oh, no.
Good, okay.
Just a
I think they're just looking
recommendation.
for
Thank you.
direction.
All right, just some,
Yeah, and
okay, good enough. All right, I just want to make sure that we're not approving the kite
No,
festival.
no,
Thank you.
no.
Good. That's all I cared about there.
Mr. Christensen?
The Curry County Road Department is involved with the Kite Festival and several other festivals because they fill out a facility permit request to close down a county road for their festival. So we were holding off on issuing them a permit, and we could put in the permit. It'll be based on what the commissioners say.
Subject to, yeah.
Yes, subject to the commissioners.
And if I'm not mistaken, your permits are all revocable as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think we're covered on that one too. Thank you.
okay, I just don't want to cause a liability
Yep.
for the county. I'll just
Right.
say that
It's okay.
we didn't take a vote on it,
Sure.
but because of this,
Yeah.
we'll recommend you
Well,
continue.
it's almost too early to weigh in.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Okay.
But I can understand where she's coming from, too.
Yeah.
I think the next 3 weeks in this is going to be paramount in directing not only this county but the nation on where we're going to be in the fall. All right, next, we do not have a director's report today, so we'll have commissioner updates. Commissioner Boyce.
Mr. Chair, point of order, we have to go back to 7G.
Oh, you are right. You know what? I put it over on this side here, and I missed it. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So it'll be 7J for
Let's see. Okay.
For-
Actually, it's probably J,
H was,
about K, because J is commissioner comment.
no, 7J. We're going back to discussion items. You asked for this to be a discussion item, which is commissioners to address the public.
Okay, that is correct, 7J. I'm talking about the Curry Essential Newspaper designation.
Oh, okay.
And I think that will remain, or does it remain, Mr. Chair, 7G?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Basically, quickly here, I just added one word, designated through a proclamation, God, I hope I spelled that correctly, for Curry County and Board of Commissioners who recognize our 3 local newspapers as essential. Newspapers and media employees are responsible but allowed to travel as needed for media business. The Curry County Reporter, Port Orford News, Curry Coastal Pilot. And by the recommendation of the Oregon Newspaper Publishers Association, this is very important to our rural county and our best option, one of our best options for keeping our citizens informed, especially during these times of public safety emergencies. That was the language you requested to be changed. Does that help, Board?
Yes.
That's fine.
Because the original agenda routing slip said designating, so that didn't seem confusing to me, but I think a proclamation would be more appropriate. Okay. So I'd like to make a motion that we proclaim our 3 Curry County newspapers as essential to Curry County media efforts.
And do you want to include during this, or temporarily?
I think it's just as he described.
I wouldn't make it temporary because with what we've dealt with in the last 10 years.
Temporary.
Well, I mean, it's nothing against you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So do we get a second?
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Aye.
Chair Pash,
Aye.
motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you, pom-poms.
All right, then we're going to go back to 7J, to address, commissioners to address the public in the beginning of meetings.
So, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Boyce.
We're approaching the end of our second hour on, I think it's been another reasonably productive meeting, and I appreciate that. I think at the beginning of our board meetings, I know sometimes I think there's an effort to make the meetings go as fast as possible. That's not necessarily negative or positive from my perspective. But sometimes if we're going to give commissioner comments now, an hour and 45 minutes later, and two, I would add to that the director's option of speaking for 2 minutes, reasonably, all three commissioners and even Council Huddle. There's something that we need to get out to the public early on, and frankly, my position is we need to have that 2-minute option outside of emergency times as well. So just a couple minutes. In the last 2 or 3 meetings, I've taken a little bit of liberty in just offering some different comments and tried to keep them very short in respect to the board's time. But there are often things that probably shouldn't wait.
What I'd like to say to that, though, Commissioner, is I don't know if we need to make that an agenda item or something on the, I mean, I know since I've been here, many times you've come to me and said, I'd like to bring something up to the board. And if you have something like that, absolutely, especially during this time, I don't know if we need to actually add it as a, as a numbered line on here. But if there's something that is important to the public that you feel that you need to get out to the public early in a meeting, I think just asking or saying, I'd like to get this done this morning early if I can. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think I've ever said no to anyone that's asked me.
I think that's a fair characterization and is appreciated. It's always good to hear from all three commissioners, and that's a valuable time. I'm with you in general agreement. Probably doesn't need to be a agenda item listed each time. If the commissioners can come to the chair previously and ask for that time, I think that's suitable, and I can follow that. If that's the board consensus, I'll be glad to follow that.
Commissioner Gold?
And I think you have a good point, Chair Pash. Just the point that I was able to add 2 things to the agenda today without a big hassle. 2 important things, and I think a lot of this, as we go through this crisis, we're going to have these things that come up on the agenda because things are changing so quickly. So
this thing closes on a Friday or a Monday, and a day right now is a week in most schedules. So I'm just thankful that we have a board that works together and we can do, we can add these kind of things and do what we need to do to get the business of the county done. So I'm always open to adding things at the last minute if they're needed.
I think we have a good direction. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so we will go to commissioner updates now. Commissioner Boyce, you're limited to 2 minutes. No, just
that ain't gonna happen. At some point, Mr. Chair, and I don't have a strong opinion either way right now, but I think the board is probably recognizing collectively here that at some point we may want to just do meetings by phone. I don't think we've come to that yet, and I have no complaints with the last 20 meetings as far as how they've been structured, and generally feel like we're doing and fulfilling our responsibilities to the public. But I want to leave that option open that if at some point we did do a good test run with you on the phone, and that was at 2 o'clock Thursday meeting, and it was a good shakedown cruise for our process with the phone in, and we had a lot of people who were able to listen in. So I don't think we need to go to that yet. I'm just wondering if we want to be somewhat prepared should that day come and kind of have a plan there.
Let me interject a thought on that because hopefully Eric is listening. That's something that I think for Eric to look into. I do know that they have a line. My daughter was talking to me about it a couple of weeks ago. They do have a way for all of us to call in on one line and it's like a Skype channel, but it's not really Skype. It's called something else. And you can also have integrated audio with several people on that same. We're all seeing the same thing on the screen because when I was in the meeting last week, there was about a 38 to 40 second delay. I timed it a couple of times. So you're speaking, And I'm watching Commissioner Gold commenting on something else as you were speaking, so it was really difficult to keep up with that meeting that way. But I do know if we were to do a video teleconference, like we did with the company that, with the software, the accounting software, there was 3 of them on on that same call, and we were all able to interject with each other. Maybe have Eric look into, can we get that? Is it just a download? Is it a software program that the county would have to purchase? And how easy is that to implement? Commissioner Gold?
I know they do a lot of meetings at SWAC by something called Zoom, and the mediation is going to be done by that also, the April 10th mediation.
Okay.
So I don't know how effective that is, but certainly something we should look into because I think it's free.
I'll ask Eric to look into that.
Yeah, the only thing about that is we need to keep things simple, at least for the next couple of months. And this system that we had last Thursday was remarkably simple. We had Ms. Plaguey and Mr. Feliciano in here both working on adjusting volumes, thanks to Staff Jesuit on locating that phone conference system. I'd like to just for now, without spending a lot of staff time, keep it this way on the option as needed in the future. And thanks for bringing up the 10 to 30 second delay. I don't know yet. I never have time to go back and look at our meetings. I doubt if you do either. But I don't know if that's just a YouTube problem. But I think that that's something that our staff could fix, repair, overcome when the time would be allowed. But I want to make that an issue, and that was next on my list, and I think we need to correct that. The system has been working really good for 3 or 4 years, and now we have a breakdown that, frankly, I don't think we've had time to really dig into, but it's not good for the public to, they'll lose interest fast, as you just described, bouncing around there. So carrying on here, public health, boy, I'll tell you what I've learned in just the last few months, few weeks. I don't know where we're going to find the funding, but I, as one commissioner, would love to have an investment into that entire program. I was talking to Council Huddle yesterday. He's got quite an interest in how that affects our community through immunizations, school nutrition, certainly the WIC program. It's an opportunity on public education, and I think many opportunities to pull our different communities together. So I just want the public to understand that I think that needs to be on our priority list. I don't have a direct approach that I would recommend to the board at this time, but I am seeing how important it is. We've got a little bit of a trial run, well, maybe a large trial run with the whole coronavirus issue, but I've witnessed, you've witnessed, we've all saw our people work long, hard hours and really done some excellent work. I want to mention, we've been very committed to keeping our people working and at good production levels. Every day is a new adventure, a new change, and so we'll just keep staying tuned. I mentioned Secretary of State Bev Clarnell last week is going ahead, the state of Oregon, with the elections. I never thought I'd say that I'm in favor of mail-in votes, but in this case, it gives Oregon a tremendous advantage, and I'm just grateful for that. There's only 4 in the Clerk Colin's office and elections, and I just want the public to know they are open. They're quite essential, and they're on target, as I think Roadmaster Christian mentioned, some pretty important deadlines that they are. Or no, it was Director Brewer, Facilities and Maintenance. Mr. Chair, I'm looking at some point in time here and working with Summer Madison, Senator Merkley's office, George Rhodes, certainly David Brock Smith, a Curry Business Recovery Committee that I want to detail out and present to the board at some point in time here. And working with Merkley's office, they're really committed to streamlining, fast-tracking, for lack of a better term, the SBA process. I think we've all been over time. And I want the public to know that any businesses out there that need help, the Senate yesterday passed the $2 trillion effort. That's $150 billion coming back to the states. That is will be an average of $3 million per state. Pretty simple math. $3 billion per state. I'm sorry. So that's $3,000 million on the average to the states. And so that puts all the counties. We're number 25 out of 36 counties in terms of population, so we're not the smallest. Oregon is number 24. See, I just got an email from Senator Merkley's office here. Oregon is number 26 out of 50 states in terms of population. I was telling Roadmaster Christensen earlier that there's a concern that, and this is through NACO, by the way. I've got tons of notes here. I won't go into it today, but other than to emphasize that, and I was telling Roadmaster Christensen that there is an issue, concern, legitimate throughout the 1,100 counties in the country that some of this money will go to the states and will not come down to the rural areas. So we have to position ourselves, and I know you're aware of this, we have to position ourselves to be very progressive and even a little vigorous in staking our claim in this whole thing, saying here's what has happened to our businesses, here's what's happened to the 3 weeks we needed to take care of our employees to not lose them and keep them on staff and focus. So everything does have to go through the governor's office. That doesn't intimidate me or concern me greatly, but with the people we have in this business recovery committee, with commercial people, business folks in the community that I think we could incorporate and get their opinion. They can help smaller businesses. It will go from SBA to the Treasury. So if the board, if anybody in the community has interest in working on this committee, subject to board approval, then I think we need to get started immediately. And Economic Development Director Madison has already made some very good progress, and I ran this by her just this morning, and with her review and Director Smelzer and some other community people, I think I can bring something back to the board fairly quickly that, and then we can start recruiting those people. So one more thing I want to read that is part of the, this is through AOC and NACO, as part of the state stabilization fund or other general financial support, we also respectfully request that America's counties be eligible for direct assistance from the U.S. Treasury. So it's going to be able to bypass the SBA bureaucracy that we're all quite intimidated by, especially the small employers on that process. I'm working with Shell Megson of the Chief of Staff for Representative Brock Smith. This funding, too, may be one of our biggest concerns, one of our biggest priorities would be how can some of that money come back to mitigate some of the jail medical expenses from the inmates that the Curry County taxpayers are picking up the bill on. And it's a huge issue. She's very well tuned in, and that goes back to it might even help all the other rural counties if we have some sort of a plan or system that says, hey, this is what our taxpayers are paying for this inmate's medical, and we can't withstand these expenses, and we're not going to release our inmates prematurely. So I haven't had a chance to talk to the sheriff or his staff yet, but I think there's some really good opportunities here. And what I was talking to the Roadmaster Christian about too, even if we only got a tenth of that average, I think it's going to be like $50 million per county. And I don't want to overstate that, obviously, but there's going to be some funds there. We just have to fight for them. And that would also be a potential opportunity to get back to the road fund reserve some of the money that was borrowed, taken, whatever, however you want to categorize that over the years. One more thing, Mr. Chair, I had one citizen say, if we get to a point where we have to close down any travel into or out of this county, and there's some very rational people that think that is what's coming. I'm not suggesting that yet. But one creative person that I know quite well say, here's a possible option, 5 to stay alive. if you're a visitor here, you're asked to go home. We will help as much as we can. 5 gallons of gas, receipt required. 5 items from the grocery store, receipt required. 5 hours to get home. There's just about any place in Oregon you can get home outside the borders in 5 hours. Hopefully it'll be 5 weeks so you can come back and tour and visit and experience our wonderful hospitality. There's a lot of selfish people out there, and we can't pretend like they're not there, and they are jeopardizing and compromising our health and safety, not to mention what will happen, could happen, with our medical facilities. And I think that, by the way, a tremendous shout out to the Brookings Emergency Room. Where would we be right now had that not the leadership of the Career Health Network to get that online? That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gold?
Okay, I've been participating in Regional Solutions meeting, and I'm just going to give you an update about what's happened. We'll be having meetings weekly because of this economic situation. I'm just going to give you a brief update on this. First of all, they gave a very rough estimate of employment in industries particularly vulnerable to disruption from prior executive orders. And this meeting happened on Monday, so in some ways this is old information. In Curry County, there are 1,900 jobs, or 27% of the total employment here that is vulnerable to disruption, like restaurants, etc. The casinos were represented there. The casinos are closing. Up in the Coquille tribe is closing theirs, Umpqua, and so forth. Alex Campbell is the one running these meetings, and the question was asked, how long can we anticipate impacts? And Alex responded, to speculate, the optimistic scenario is probably another 2 to 4 weeks. I don't know about that. CCD indicated that there's an emergency loan fund up to $15,000 intended to be a lifeline to allow businesses to get through the SBA and EIDL process. So that might be an important thing to bring to your committee. Kyle Stevens from SOWEB indicated that he's been surveying employers, and they've received 112 responses reflecting 500 impacted workers. Immediate concern is on medical industry. Many employers, clinics are closing, critical access hospitals revenue is down. There's serious shortage of personal protective equipment. He says there's a week of gear on hand. Up in Coos Bay, the Bay Clinic is closed. That's a huge clinic. Bandon Chamber said the TLT losses will hit the city of Bandon hard. And I don't know how hard it's going to hit our county, but that's definitely a concern. Both Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley's representatives were there, and they are focused in on small business concerns. So that pretty much highlights what happened at that meeting. Also, it was mentioned to me that the county, and I don't know whether this is legal or not, so that's why I'm bringing this up, put out a temporary moratorium on evictions of rentals and mortgages and businesses. I don't know whether we have the power to do this, but I can foresee if people are evicted, there could be a lot of violence and so forth. So Council Huddle, I don't know whether we have any power to do that. Also, let me just give you a little update on the hotline that I'm working on. After talking to Cherie and Jeremy, I don't think it's going to be possible for the volunteers to answer all of these phone calls simply because there could be possible issues with statements that aren't always the same. So I'm thinking possibly of having a recorded line with all of the resources that we have available here in the county so that people could get those resources and be able to reach out to those. So that's what I'm working on now, and that's my report. Did I make it in 2 minutes? I think I did longer this time. I'm sorry. Wake up, John Huddle.
I would just like to kind of have a little conversation for a minute with the public. You know, we are facing difficult times here. I mean, 3 years ago, we had fires that burned 500,000 acres in this county. Last year, we've had an inordinate amount of rock come down this river, and I mean, basically decimated the rivers in our county, our sports, our local businesses. Curry County has faced a lot. And it's hard sometimes to wake up and pick up your head off the pillow and say, let's go on. I'm just hearing so much negative on public and social media about what we're dealing with. But we are Americans, and we always pick ourselves up by the bootstraps and get out of our beds and go to work and take care of our kids and do the things we're supposed to do. For people that are working here, I want to say to you, rely on your department heads. You know, these people are in place to give you direction and give you comfort in what the answers you need. And to our department heads, I want to say rely on Director of Operations Schmelzer. She is diligent in her duties, and I would just hope that if people have questions, department heads have questions and concerns, that they would bring them to her sooner than later. And to anyone else, I mean, we're here. This board is here. You elected us to be here, and we are here for you, and we will do what we can do to make this a little bit more seamless and as easy as we can. But I also want to say we need to keep this into perspective. This is a virus that, yes, we don't know a lot about, and we don't know how it is, you know, if it can morph into other things, how the vaccinations and all that are going to happen from this. But we need to keep it in perspective. I was told last night of an approximate number this year that have already died from influenza is over 7,000 nationwide. This is, you know, so we need to kind of keep these things in perspective. The amount of people that die every year from heart disease and other diseases that we face, it just, again, it's scary at the rate that it's happening and the dangers we face, but the amount of people that are dying from this in the United States is dwarfed by the amount of people that are dying from influenza, heart disease, and many, many other diseases. And everybody has their hand out for something, and that's something else that people need to understand. This county is strapped financially right now. We are running bare bones staffing. So we are already at our wits' end to get a lot of the tasks that are necessary in this county to get done. So to now have this come on us and have to stagger and be 6 feet apart and have all, you know, our office buildings closed and everything else we're dealing with, I would ask the public to be very patient with the county employees. It's not their fault. They are dealing with what they have been dealt. So I would ask the public to be very patient with county employees and the people that are here to serve you. I do want to say that I asked yesterday Director Schmelzer and Ms. Madison to add to our county website a button for the COVID-19. We've had a lot of people ask how many people in the county have been tested, do we have any positives? As of yesterday, we had no positives in Curry County. I believe there were 12 tests in Curry County as of yesterday. There was some misinformation that the rapid test was available at the hospital. It was not for COVID-19, it was for influenza. But we do now, if you go to the Curry County website, you'll see on the top tabs a COVID-19 bottom, and if you scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll also see a COVID-19 tab on the bottom of the page. And if you click on that and scroll down to the bottom of that page, on the left side, you will find that the Oregon Health Authority has a button there, and you can open that button, and you'll see all of the local statistics as well as state and national statistics. I just want to say, everyone, you know what, take a breath. We are in this all together. We are here, and I'm hopeful that we will get through it in the coming weeks. I applaud our president for the unprecedented steps he has taken to get funding available for this and to open up restrictions on some of the testing, drug testing that they are currently dealing with. And I'm a man of faith, and I rely on that as well, and I would ask that those are of faith to remember who's in charge. So with that, I have nothing further.
Mr. Chair, can we have a little discussion here? I want to make sure I understand, so I'll give you an opportunity to clarify. When we suggest to the public that heart ailments are, that's not a contagious, it's not a disease. We are surrounded right now, sir, by the National Guard in both California and Washington. We have people blatantly coming into our community that are exposing our citizens. And I just think any interpretation of downplaying the seriousness of this could send the wrong message to the citizens. I don't think that was your intent. I hope it wasn't your intent. The flu is contagious, and I understand the figures there, but the situation in New York, Washington, California, and the compromise it puts our citizens in this state. I've been watching this for 5 weeks now. I've tried very hard to be extremely careful of my words so that I don't panic, but there has been some downplaying within our own community here. And here we are to where you saw the document, the request to the governor that we passed last week, and we're waiting and hoping against all odds that she will incorporate that into her next order. And the whole country, and your reference to president is timely and good and appropriate. There's a tremendous debate, dialogue, discussion on getting people back to work while we still can, versus if we dare get them back too soon, what are the consequences for our country and some of these hot spots with Oregon right in the middle. That's why I think we're going to need to potentially consider meeting every other day minimum and watch extremely closely. That's why I'm going to be here 24/7. I don't think I got to have any obligations. So I do want to give you a chance to clarify, if you would, please.
Well, I think, again, I started my comments with we need to keep this in perspective.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, there are many, many more that have died from the influenza flu virus this year that have died from this. Is this a danger? Is it an unknown? Yes, it is. And that's what I said in my comments, this is an unknown. We don't know if it can dwarf into other things. All these things are still to be known. We don't know if you can catch it twice. These are all unknowns. All I'm saying is we need to keep everything in perspective, and to see people, some of the people that I've spoken with, literally, they're afraid to move. If you don't want to catch this virus, you don't have to. Put yourself in an environment that you can't catch it. Stay home. Keep your doors closed. But when you open your door and come out, absolutely, then you open yourself up to a larger percentage and so on. All I'm saying is we need to keep this in perspective. It is a flu virus that we don't know the down the road consequences of yet. And until those are known, we need to keep it in perspective. That was my comment to it.
Thank you. The unknown is the biggest danger of this, in my opinion. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but we don't know who's carrying. And you can give it to somebody else if you're carrying without knowing, and they can then give it to somebody else without knowing. That's the danger. That's the difference. So to compare it to any other influenza or anything, I just strongly disagree with. That's
and
all
I agree with you to a point on that, but again, on a final comment on it, I just, I've had 3 comment cards handed to me this morning. You've picked up documents that Council Huddle handed you I mean, we've all been in places that we could have this. I know I was in Washington a couple of weeks ago and could have brought it back with me. I don't know. I know that I didn't test for it. I know Council Huddle was in Arizona a few weeks ago. Ms. Schmelzer, who, welcome, has walked into the room. Many of us could have just went down the road and touched a grocery item that someone in front of them has it. So you're right, these are the unknowns. All I'm saying is we need to keep that in perspective. If you, follow what the officials say. If you think you've been compromised, if you have a temperature, if you have any of the symptoms of this virus, seek proper health authorities and deal with it immediately. But all I'm saying is let's try and keep it in perspective. We've basically shut down the economy of the world for this virus. And I'm not saying that that wasn't necessary. It is unprecedented, and I am in fear of the ramifications are going to be greater for that on public health than the disease. That's what I meant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric, if you see me here, I just want to conclude, if I may. I'm sorry, I should have asked.
Well, Commissioner Gold, these are my public comments, and this broken out into this. Go ahead, Commissioner Gold.
I'm just going to add a little ray of hope here. I was watching a doctor speak on television today, and he was saying the virus has not mutated, so there's a good possibility they can come up with a vaccine to take care of it.
Commissioner Boyce?
Oh, just holding this up. We're on day 10 of the president's 15-day challenge to us. Yeah, he was pretty bold and courageous, I think, to suggest that we might even be able to put a lot of people back to work at certain parts of the country by Easter, and perhaps even open up the churches. So I'm not optimistic, but I'm not pessimistic either. Thanks for giving me that last couple of minutes there, Mr. Chair.
And one more little bright note is we were down 1,000, and the United States is doing an enormous amount of testing right now. We were down 1,000 cases yesterday from the prior day, new cases. So, Ms. Schmelzer, did you want to make a comment? I saw you walk into the room before we go into executive session. Okay. Then we are going to adjourn this meeting and enter into executive session per 192-6602 F and H, litigation and exempt information. So we are in recess. Executive session. The board is as directed to proceed as directed, and with nothing further with our regular meeting, we are adjourned.
Tell the public no workshop today.
And, no workshop today, public.
Thank you.
Sorry.